Right, before the break, I said to you, we are going on a journey together to Mars. Now, who here would like to go to Mars? Hands up, let me see. Less than I thought. I'm sure many of us, inside of us, kids once again, we'd all love to hop on a machine and go to Mars. I certainly would as well. Now, the next gentleman on stage, he is basically putting together, it's already on its way, well, not the actual mission to Mars, but the idea, the project, to take people to Mars, but not a return ticket. It's a one-way ticket to Mars. Now, I'm maybe a little bit confused, as you are, how that's going to work. But he's going to come on stage and he's going to tell you all about it. And actually, before we started, I did ask, how much would that probably cost me? And he told me, nothing at all. Count me in. Right, before we begin, we're going to watch a short little video just to put us in the mood of about 100 people who've already applied to go to Mars. And this little video here will show you, I'm sure, what you need to know before our speaker comes on the stage. His name is Bas Lansdorp, and he's the founder of Mars One. So let's watch the video and then introduce Lars.
I want to go to Mars not just to be a part of history, but to inspire people around the world.
The colonization of Mars is the adventure of the century.
This is our chance to get the world excited about space again.
If we can look up from Earth and know that human beings are living on another planet, will we ever again be able to tell ourselves that there's anything we can't do?
I want to contribute directly to mankind's confident expansion into the solar system, which we have to do if we're going to survive in the long term.
I believe it is in our nature, and it is our destiny.
I want, after I die, the impact of my life is imparted upon those who follow.
I know it comes at the cost of living Earth forever, but future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams.
Good afternoon. Thank you. So my company is organizing a manned mission to Mars. How is that even possible, right? I mean, not even NASA has done it yet. How can a small Dutch company like my own say that we're going to Mars? I'll tell you all about the how, but first I would like to start with the why. I mean, why should humans go to Mars in the first place? I am actually convinced that human exploration of Mars will change the Earth more than we can imagine. We're not going to Mars for Mars, we're going to Mars to make Earth a better place. For example, I believe that having a big project and making this a worldwide effort of humans going to Mars, it will bring everybody on Earth a little bit closer together. To have a common goal brings people closer together. And I believe it will inspire people to believe that anything is possible. So there will be more businesses, more people will pursue education, more kids will be inspired to want to be scientists and astronauts again instead of pop stars. In all these kinds of ways, I think it will change the Earth. But perhaps the most important way it will change the Earth is that it will show people how valuable our Earth is. Mars is the second best place in the solar system for humans to live. But this is a dry desert planet. And I believe that creating this program and showing to people how this is done, how difficult it is to go to the next planet, I believe that that will really make people aware of how special the best place for humans in the solar system is, which is our own little planet. We have to take care of this place because there is no backup Earth. And I think that something as inspiring and enticing as a human mission to Mars can really make people aware of that. And not just the well-educated people, but everyone, because everybody will be watching when humans are going to Mars. So we're going to Mars for Earth. So how do we do this? Well, the most important thing what makes our plan feasible is the fact that we are organizing a mission of permanent settlement, a one-way trip. And that is really what makes our mission possible. It makes it possible financially, because we don't need to develop as much technology as for the return mission. It's much less hardware that you need to send to Mars for a permanent settlement mission than for a return mission. You don't need the return vehicle, you don't need the propellant for the return vehicle. It's also technologically more feasible because it's smaller steps. It's actually all the steps that you need to bring humans to Mars have already been done. Not for sending humans to Mars, but we know how to land things on Mars. We know how to keep humans alive in difficult environments like the International Space Station. We know how to launch big equipment from Earth to Mars. All these steps have been done. We just don't know how to bring people back. And to illustrate how difficult it is to bring people back, I would like to tell you a few words about how difficult it is to launch something from Earth, let alone from Mars. So what a lot of people don't know is that 5% of all satellite launches here on Earth, they fail. They don't all explode on the launch pad, that's the ones we see on the news. But 5% of the rocket launches have their satellite end up in the wrong orbit around the Earth for whatever reason. So it could be an explosion, but it could also be simply that it's in the wrong orbit. But imagine that you're an astronaut on Mars trying to return to Earth, and your launcher puts you in the wrong orbit around Mars or around the Sun. Well, I actually would prefer to die on the launch pad, because then at least it's quick. So if 5% of all rocket launches fail on Earth, how difficult should it be on Mars? Remember that on Earth we have everything under control. We know exactly how we built the rocket. 1,000 engineers check every single component in the rocket before departure. And then 5% still fails. Now we're going to Mars. So we're launching our return rocket with all the vibrations involved, and nobody can check it anymore. Then it's flying through space, through vacuum, for 7 months before it lands on the planet. With the landing, there's a lot of vibrations involved again. Maybe it's a little bit of a rough landing. Then it's going to stand on a dusty planet with dust storms and all kinds of difficult conditions for a couple of years. And then a crew of three or four astronauts needs to get into that rocket and launch from Mars. I don't see it happening. I mean, if we can't do it from Earth reliably, how can we do it from Mars? Of course, there's no laws of nature that prevent us from doing this. And I'm convinced that once you have a big community on Mars with engineers that can check all the systems before departure, it's possible. But I think practically, it's impossible to do the return mission until there is a big society of humans on Mars. And finally, I think permanent settlement is just a much smarter way of exploring a planet like Mars. I mean, we don't need tourists on Mars. We need settlers that are going to build a society for the next people that are coming. So don't send people there for a year, send people there who can work for 40 years or 50 years, who can really build a new society on what I consider the next continent. Humans have explored the Earth continent by continent, we've settled the Earth, and Mars is, from my point of view, simply the next continent we're going to settle. So what does the plan look like? We're going to send a demonstration mission to Mars in 2022. It's a demonstration mission because it will demonstrate some of the technologies that we need for the human mission. So extraction of water from the Martian surface, use of thin film solar panels for power generation. But we also call it a demonstration mission because it will demonstrate Mars One, my company. Right now we're a small team, we're 10 people, and we've never sent something to Mars. And NASA is the only entity that has ever landed something on Mars successfully today. So with this unmanned mission, we will demonstrate that we are with them, that we are one of the few parties that can actually do this. And we need to keep the risk of that mission as low as possible. So our 2022 unmanned mission, demonstration mission, is almost a duplicate of a mission that NASA has already sent in 2007, the NASA Phoenix mission. We'll use the same platform that NASA used, and we'll install our own experiments on that platform to have as low risk as possible. And we've already had our first contract with aerospace supplier Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin has built the Phoenix mission for NASA, and so we're using Lockheed Martin to build the platform for us, again, to keep the risk and the cost actually as low as possible. So, a very important mission for us, and I believe it will define the success of Mars One if we can do that mission. 2 years later, 2024, we're sending a dedicated communication satellite to Mars, a geosynchronous, a Mars synchronous satellite that will hang above the outpost location, so we have almost 24/7 communication possibilities with the outpost when it's there. Again, 2 years later, we're sending a rover to Mars. The rover is going to drive around on the surface and is going to find the best location for the settlement. Again, 2 years later, 2029, we're sending all the hardware for the human mission. Remember, there's no humans on Mars yet. We're sending the hardware for the human mission. So 2 life support units, 2 living units, a second rover, and a supply unit. The 2 rovers that we have will move everything to the right location. They will activate the life support systems, and we will start producing a breathable atmosphere in the living units and water, stored water before the astronauts are going. So when all that is confirmed to be working, we're sending our first crew in 2031. The first crew will first go to Earth orbit, where they will find a small space station. They will use that small space station to fly to Mars. Now, imagine that you're on that first crew. You've been launched to Earth, you get into the little space station that's going to fly to Mars, and then at some point in time, all the systems have been checked on Mars and in your little space station, and you're going to have to decide to press the big red button that starts the rocket engine, that takes you to Mars. Now, of course, it's not really going to be a big red button, that's only in the movies, but psychologically, it will be a big red button, because the moment you start the rocket engines, there is no return. You are committed to go to Mars and to spend the rest of your life on the red planet. So that's a pretty big decision to make. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So you fly to Mars, it takes about 7 months. They land on the surface, they find the outpost. A few weeks after they land, the hardware for the second crew is landing, because we always send the hardware ahead of the crews. So a lot of construction to be done. They're going to grow their own food. But of course, the most important reason that these people are going to Mars is to explore. Mars is it's a small planet, it's only half the size of the Earth, but there's no oceans on Mars, so there's just as much land on Mars as there is on Earth, so plenty of research to be done. Now, 2 years after the first crew lands, the second crew lands, and in that way we keep sending additional crews instead of trying to bring the crews back to Earth. Now that's the plan, and all the steps in this plan are possible with existing technology. That doesn't mean that these systems exist. There's a lot of design, a lot of engineering, a lot of testing needed before we can actually do it. But we don't need any new inventions to make it happen. There's a few scale-ups. There's some challenges, for example, in the Mars suits. How do you give them the lifetime you need for people who are staying there the rest of their lives? How do you make sure they can repair them, etc.? But we don't need any new inventions, no new materials, no new physical principles to make this mission happen, because it is a mission of permanent settlement. Now, if this is technically possible, then the next question, especially in Holland, where I'm from, is what does it cost? And how are you going to pay for it? The cost of getting the first 4 people to Mars, including all the preparatory missions, is about 6 billion US dollars. 6 billion US dollars, that's a lot of money. My idea of getting humans to Mars is, I've had it forever since I was 20 years old, when I was a mechanical engineering student. And the money was always the missing piece of the puzzle for me. How do you finance a manned mission to Mars? When humans go to Mars, I'm sure we all agree it will be one of the most exciting events of the 21st century, right? I mean, everybody will be watching when humans land on Mars. 97% of the people watching TV in 1969, when the humans landed on the moon, 97% was watching the moon landing. What were the other 3% watching, right? What do you watch when people are landing on the moon? Bold and the Beautiful, maybe. So that's a huge audience. And what's the value of a big audience? I had no idea. But then I found the revenue numbers of the International Olympic Committee in London for the London Olympics. The London Olympics made about $4.5 billion US dollars from broadcasting rights and sponsorships and partnerships. $4.5 billion, that's almost the cost of our mission, just by organizing one Olympic event. We estimate right now that the value of all the media exposure around our human mission to Mars, the value of that is about 8 Olympic events. That's a new monetary unit that I personally invented. 8 Olympic events are about 36 billion US dollars, just the exposure value. So our business case is not about technology, like you might expect, but it's actually about content, about unique content, just like the Olympic Games, the FIFA World Cup, the Formula One. Unique content is a very high-priced commodity. Of course, there's other business cases, and technology is one of them. If humans are going to Mars, there's going to be a lot of technology spin-off. For example, growing food with less water and less energy than we do right now. Very relevant for a lot of places on Earth, but even more important for Mars. Recycling. Every kilo we send to Mars costs about 100,000 euros. So every kilo that you can recycle will actually save you 100,000 euros. So it's worth investing in systems for agriculture with low water and energy requirements, for recycling, for our mission. But once you have the technology, then of course you can use it here on Earth. So exposure, technology, another very important revenue model for Mars One is donations. So we have a for-profit entity, which is actually listed here in Germany at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, Mars One Ventures, which is all the commercial monetization rights. So that's the media exposure, the IP technology. But it's also donations. Mars One is also a not-for-profit foundation, and we're getting donations from all over the world, from people who think this is important. Now, these are small donations right now, and it's not a lot of money, but we see that with every step we take, the amount grows, and the amount of people that donate increases. So I believe by the time we have our first unmanned mission, this will really contribute significantly to the cost of our mission. But that's people like you and I with small wallets. There's also a few people on this planet with extremely big wallets. I've told you that the cost of our mission is about 6 billion US dollars, and there's more than 250 people on the planet that have 6 billion US dollars. Now imagine what you would do if you had $6 billion. You'd probably buy a yacht, $100 million. You'd buy an island, another $100 million. You'd buy a couple of houses around the world, another $100 million. And now you've still got $6 billion. 5.7 is still basically $6 billion. What are you going to do? Well, we can offer these people immortality. Not literally, we can't make them live forever. But if Bill Gates, the richest man on the planet the last time I checked, if he finances our mission to Mars, the first city on Mars will be called Gatesville. Carlos Slim, second richest man on the planet, Slim City. And we have a name ready for all the 250 people on the list. That's not really true. Now, and I don't think it will be Bill Gates or Carlos Slim. I'm almost sure it will not be. But it will probably be number 30 or number 35 that you and I have never heard of. Someone from Asia or from South America. Someone who doesn't have a legacy yet, and who's interested in basically buying one. And we're open to that. And we need to make this happen. And people like this, if they can contribute to make it happen, I think they deserve having their name on a city on Mars. So there's all kinds of different business cases around the human mission to Mars. Too many to go into right now, but I am convinced that this is financially feasible. I'm convinced it's technically feasible. The biggest challenge is really the human aspect. How do you find a team that can actually push that big red button in the spaceship? How do you find 4 people that can decide to fly to Mars for 7 months and to spend 2 years on Mars with just the 4 of them before the second crew is joining them? That's a huge challenge. Imagine how difficult it would be for you and your 3 best friends. Really take a moment to decide who are my 3 best friends, and imagine being locked up with them for 3 years. I mean, you'd probably kill each other. So we're looking for a team that can actually deal with this, and that's extremely challenging. Fortunately, we had loads of applications. We had more than 200,000 people show interest in going to Mars on a one-way trip. 200,000 people. Now the challenge for us was to find people who might actually be able to do this. Now how do you do that? Well, we're narrowing it down now. We're down to 100 people. From these, we will select a number of teams of 4, and we will start training them full-time, so it will be their job to train full-time to go to Mars. We'll train them for the engineering skills, for the medical skills, for any skill that they need, because there is no escape from Mars. If something goes wrong on the planet, they need to solve it with the 4 of them. But the most important thing we'll do is we'll test them. So even after they've been selected for training, they're not guaranteed to go to Mars. We will test them by building a copy of the Mars outpost here on Earth, and we'll lock up each of the teams at least once per year for a couple of months to see how they deal with the isolation conditions. And when they're in the outpost here on Earth, the simulation outpost, we will give them hell. Everything will go wrong. So as an example, imagine you're in with your 3 best friends, you're in that simulation outpost, and there's a birthday party, and you go to bed very late, you had a few drinks, and after half an hour in bed, the alarm goes off, the life support system is failing, you have to fix it. So you get out of bed, you fix the life support system, takes you a couple of hours, you go to bed, the next morning after just 1 hour of sleep, you're completely wasted, you wake up, you open the door to the living room, and there's a huge smell. The toilets are broken. Huge smell, and you're already nauseous from bad sleep and the party yesterday. So you enter the living room, huge smell, and then you see the sock of one of your crewmates on the floor in the living room. Because it will be those small interpersonal things. I mean, you've always been annoyed with him leaving his socks there, but you can deal with it, you're going to Mars, but when you're completely frustrated and annoyed and sleepy, and then you see the sock, that might cause someone to snap. And we're looking for crews that can deal with those small interpersonal things. And they know the life support system will break, and they know they have to fix it. They know that the toilets will break, and they know the outpost will smell every now and then. But the small interpersonal things, that's something that we really need to train these teams, or test these teams for. All the other things we can train them for. So before we go to the questions, I would like to tell you why I am here. Why am I trying to do the impossible? Because, of course, it's almost impossible for us to actually send humans to Mars in 2032. Now, we've already achieved a lot of things. We've had our first contract with Lockheed Martin. We have a Nobel Prize laureate and an astronaut and NASA's former chief technologist on our advisory board. We've reached media all over the world. Who here had heard about Mars One before today? Who of you has seen us in the newspaper? Or that's not too bad. So, and we've had a lot of exposure. We had 200,000 people apply. So we've already achieved a lot of things. And still, I think the odds are against us. I mean, it's so difficult to make this actually happen. There's so many ways in which this may go wrong, and only a few ways in which this might go right. I'm convinced that there are ways in which we can make this happen, but of course it's going to be difficult. Now imagine 6 years ago I started Mars One. Let's go fast back 6 years and put yourself in my shoes. I had to decide. I was co-founder of a wind energy company. Everything was going well in the wind energy company, and I had to decide, do I leave my own company, the wind energy company, to start a human mission to Mars? And I actually had a really easy decision, because this is what I am inspired to do. I want to make this happen. And even if I can't actually succeed in sending humans to Mars, I want to contribute to mankind's exploration of the red planet. And I think we have already done that. I think our most important contribution so far has been twofold. First of all, we've put Mars, together with a lot of other Mars activity, we've put Mars back on the table. People are talking about Mars. I mean, we've seen the movie The Martian. There's a lot of things happening. Mars is really in the picture, and we have certainly contributed to that. But most importantly, I think we've contributed to making a human Mars mission a success by making the permanent settlement mission a topic of discussion. People are talking about one-way trips to Mars now. 6 years ago, when we started this, we had no idea how people would react. And of course, the first thing, when you hear about it, the first instant you think it's a suicide mission. Who would go on a one-way trip to Mars? But when you think about it, it's how humans have explored the Earth. And we come from the west of Africa, but we don't go back to the west of Africa for dinner every evening. Humans explore, they settle, they stay in locations, and then they move on to the next location. And Mars is simply the next location where we're going to. And I know that we've contributed to that discussion because the second man on the moon, Bas Aldrin, has thanked me for doing so. Bas Aldrin has pleaded in the American Congress that NASA should work on a one-way trip to Mars instead of a return mission. And he thanked me. He said, if it wasn't for Mars One and 200,000 people applying to your program, I wouldn't have felt at ease to suggest such a mission in the American Congress. So we are really putting that topic on the table, and we're making progress for all missions to Mars by being so much talked about and so much in the exposure. But of course, we're not nearly done yet. I am convinced that we can make this happen. I can't guarantee that we will, but I'm convinced we can do this, and I'm not nearly ready yet. And I'm hoping you're on board. Follow us, and let's take humanity to Mars. Thank you very much. You're on board, right?
Sorry?
You're on board.
I'm
You're
on
going.
board. Well, before we came on stage, I mean, yeah, initially, yeah. However, I've got a question for you, actually. So, why aren't you going to Mars? Are you going to go?
I hope to go, yes. I'm completely unqualified to be in one of the first teams. I'm a real entrepreneur, so I'm impatient, I'm stubborn, I'm easily annoyed, which I think are all good qualities for entrepreneurs. In my resume actually, I use different words. But they're the worst qualities for someone on the first team or the second team. Because we need Olympians in tolerance. We need the best of the best team players who can deal with the kinds of situations that I've described. And that's not me. So I hope to go one day, maybe when there's 5 or 6 teams, like 20 or 30 people on Mars, then it's a more easy society where I might fit in.
I mean, the thing I'll say is smelly socks is one thing, but going to Mars with a group of people, a small group of people for, what, 3 years? Is it
yeah, and then the second crew is joining you. You're not going back. There's 8 people, and then there's 12 people. So it's a huge challenge.
One thing I'll say, just listening to you on the side there, you certainly got the passion and the enthusiasm. I can often hear the buzzword, you're convinced. I want to know, literally, the others. I'm sure when you tell people or you share with people your idea, many people's eyes light up, lots of positivity. But I'm sure anything of this magnitude, you get around the world, around the globe, a lot of people will be thinking, even when they watch back on the video on YouTube, let's say, they'll be thinking, what on earth, or why does this man here, this Dutchman, how has he got the audacity to do something like this?
Yeah, definitely. And as I said, it's a huge challenge. And I think the most important thing you have to do is to tell people it's a huge challenge. If we pretend it's easy, then nobody's going to take us seriously. So that's very important. But the reason I'm doing it is because no one else is doing it. There is no one else who actually has a roadmap, who says, okay, our first mission is this, and then this, and then this, and then humans are going. No one has that roadmap. So someone has to do it. And if no one else is doing it, then it will be me. I mean, I'd love to be just an employee in a company that already has the money in the bank to make this happen. Because that's much easier. And money is an important step that we haven't solved yet. So I'd sign up for a job like that immediately. But there is no one doing it, so someone has to do it.
Okay. It's going to be you. Right, can I just ask, so if anybody here listening to this, and again, looking back at the video, and they've said to themselves, I'm in. I would love to go to Mars and not come back. What do they have to do? What website do they go on? What do they do?
Well, we've had a first round of selections that opened in 2013. Right now, we don't have a selection open. We expect to have one open again this year, because we're going to keep selecting teams, because we expect teams will drop out because they're not good enough, or because someone in the team doesn't want to go anymore. And at some point in time, there will be actually teams going to Mars, so we need to replace those too. So we'll repeat the selection process. So just sign up for the newsletter, and we'll keep you informed when it's possible to apply again.
I think the notion of a one-way ticket and actually not coming back, so leaving behind family members, leaving behind all the things that you love, all the people, the friendships, the people that actually do this have to be a very specific kind of person that...
Yes and no. So don't forget that humans have done this all the time. 100 years ago, if you were going to Australia, you were going on a one-way trip. You were buying a one-way ticket for a boat. You were going to Australia to settle. And of course, you could go back. Theoretically, you could go back. Most people didn't, but you could go back. But a difference, if you're going to Mars, you can't go back. Especially the first teams going, they will adapt to the Martian gravity. It's lower gravity there, so you can never go back to Earth. But you're not out of touch, because on Mars you can send a WhatsApp message to your friends here on Earth, and it takes, in the worst case scenario, 20 minutes for them to receive it, and you can have a reply in 40 minutes. In Australia, 100 years ago, you could send a letter, and 6 months or 7 months later you would have the reply. So it's in many ways comparable to going to Australia 100 years ago, and there were plenty of people doing that. So I think it's simply the people with the explorer gene. And we have people, of course we have engineers and scientists applying, and the geeky type of people like myself, but we also have politicians and hairdressers and people from the military, and we have all kinds of people applying. So I think the explorer gene is not specific for certain types of people.
I'd love to, I'm sure we would both love to open this up to our audience members. So questions that you'd like to pose, have quite a few. We'll start over there on the right.
Hello, can you hear me? Good, thank you. I must congratulate you for your idea. It really sounds perfect, but I know many people have a lot of doubt, and I'm one of them. I just have one question, and it concerns finance. As far as I know, you are traded as the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, and on December the 12th, it was announced that a Hong Kong investor group, WSBT, made a 6 million investment in your company. Now, German and Hong Kong investors tried to contact WSBT to confirm that, and they were told that the spokesman, Torben, is not part of the company, and they were very sorry that he pretended to be. And I'd like you to comment on that.
Well, we're in good contact with the investor every day, and I have no doubt that that's going very well. So I don't know where that comes from, but
it comes from the director of WSBT personally.
We're in very good contact with them, so there must be some kind of confusion there. So I have no doubt. But thanks for the question.
Okay, another question. Young lady there in the center.
The team of 4 you have, what is it that you're looking for? That you are, and what makes you believe that at one point, because you will have to make a final decision, when will you know these are the 4 people that you will actually send to Mars, and what is it that you're looking for?
So when will we know, and what are the criteria? Is that the question? So the criteria are very similar actually to ESA and NASA astronauts. So for health, especially for health, For education, we have somewhat different requirements. For example, in ESA and NASA, it's almost obligatory to have a PhD. For our mission, it's not a big requirement because we're going to train them for 10 years, so much longer than ESA and NASA astronauts who are trained for about 2 or 3 years. And we'll train them especially for the very practical skills of fixing anything that breaks and fixing anyone that breaks and growing your own food, things like that. So the most important skill that we're looking for is really the team aspect. So the best team players, but we're not looking for the best team players, but we're looking for the best teams. Because you might have 2 perfect teams and you exchange one team member from one to the other, and they might be terrible teams. Everybody has that experience. So when will we know? We'll train them for until departure, so that's from today until 2031. And then our experts will decide which of the teams are ready to go, which teams are really good enough, are qualified, are well enough trained to go, and then we'll pick the first team. But you might imagine that the moment you hear that you're actually going to Mars, that might trigger all kinds of, it will trigger all kinds of emotional reactions. So we wouldn't be surprised if one of the team members decides at that moment, I don't want to go anymore. Even when he's climbing the rocket, he decides, I don't want to go anymore. So the other teams, they won't know that they have not been selected to go to Mars. They will be in isolation, and we will only tell the second and the third and the fourth team in that order that they're not going when the first team is actually on its way to Mars, because anything might happen until the very moment the crew climbs the rocket. So that's really a pretty big cliffhanger for the teams. Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions? Just put your hand out and we'll come on over.
Hello, my name is Tietze, and I would like to know, do you found a new company for media production, for content production? Because you spoke about the performance, this and showing the people is very important for you, for conduct, like money and so on. And I, by myself, was working as cameraman and very interested by. And I was interested about 50 years to the space development, and it's very important for me to know, and I'm by myself a shareholder of you.
Great, good to hear, thanks.
Okay, other questions? Hands up. I'm just again thinking again. So many, it kind of triggers a kind of mind map of where things can lead on to. So these 4 people, are you thinking of having the same sex, or like 2 women and 2 men? Because you looking ahead, a Mars baby, is that on the cards?
Actually,
you know what I mean, it's just those things you have to
babies on Mars is actually the second most frequently asked question that we get in our mailbox after can I go? So the teams will be 2 men and 2 women. We will actually have as diverse teams as possible. So 2 men, 2 women. We will try to have different age ranges, and we will try to have different cultural backgrounds. That's important for our business case because we want to reach as many people in the world as possible. But it's also important for our mission because a diverse team, if you give them enough time to work together, will always outperform homogeneous teams. So it's very important for us to have the diversity in the teams. Now, babies on Mars, imagine, we don't have the slide anymore, but imagine the first outpost, 4 people living on the planet. Anything can go wrong at any moment. So I have 2 kids. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. I would never, ever have children on Mars in such an environment because it would be so irresponsible to put them in an environment where there's just 4 adults. It's not a community, it's a group in such a dangerous environment. Maybe when there's 20 or 30 people, the environment might be right, but maybe just as important, we don't know if humans can have babies safely on Mars. So we don't know the lower gravity. Mars has only 40% of the gravity of the Earth. So maybe the fetus will grow really long and thin in the womb. And we don't know these kinds of things, so it needs to be investigated first. So for those 2 reasons, health and psychology, I think it's very important that the crews wait before they try.
It's one thing saying, you know, not to do that. It's quite irresponsible. But hey, you're up there for a long time.
Well,
bored.
having sex is not the same as having children, right? I mean, you can have sex without having children. You know that, right?
I do.
Okay.
I do. But if you, okay, we'll leave that one there. We'll leave that one there. Any other questions? Anything that's in your mind that you'd like to just ask while you've got the opportunity?
She has another question, but she's afraid to ask.
There's a young lady there.
Yep. Can you talk loud, please? Because it's really difficult for me to hear over here.
Sure, I can also talk in Dutch if you want. Hi, I'm Mel. I'm actually living in Holland. I find your story superbly interesting. Congratulations on your endeavor. I think it's amazing. But while you were talking, I'm having like 3,000 questions, and a couple were related to what you just said. So first of all, why are you not sending a bunch of SEALs, American SEALs or Dutch SEALs? They would be perfect for surviving on the planet. They form teams which are amazing because their only single purpose is survivor. And what they do is save each other from harm. So that's one question. Why would you send people with diverse backgrounds?
Yeah.
Second of all...
Can I answer that first?
Yeah.
Because I have a terrible memory. So Navy SEALs are selected to work together for weeks or months under very stressful conditions. But after their job, they go home to their families. And that's a huge, huge difference compared to people really saying goodbye to everyone for the rest of their lives. It's a huge difference. Same, people also ask, why don't you pick experienced astronauts to go to Mars? It's the same answer. So people who are astronauts who might have gone to space for half a year, that's so different than deciding to leave the planet and all your friends and your family for the rest of your life. So it's a very big difference. And if we would select only from Navy SEALs or something like that, it would limit the amount of people that we can look for. And who knows? What if we're wrong? What if the Navy SEALs are not the right group? Then we've got a training program with no suitable candidates.
Okay, I get your second part. I'm not sure about saying goodbye because we have stories from people who are not returning and they have to be prepared to die. So, but fair enough. I mean, this is an offline discussion. The second one is you said they can have safe sex. I've had a lot of safe sex, and sometimes it goes wrong. If you don't have a qualified doctor, one of your females is dead, because we know from the Middle Ages that women died more than 70% during birth. If you send in 2 males, 2 females, best scenario, only one couple falls in love, female dies, very horrible thing. Have you, like, you know, you're describing a lot of happy flows, and I'm like,
that's a good question.
Life doesn't consist of happy flows. Thanks, by the way, for letting me ask the questions. I hope I was loud enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So when selected, of course, in training, one of the most important skills we'll train them for is medical skills. And of course, we'll teach them how to do delivery of children, and actually we'll probably have equipment there that supports delivery of children, even though we would make sure that they completely understand how important it is that they don't. But it's even possible that we would never ask our crews to sterilize themselves, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think if I were going to Mars, I would have myself sterilized before I go to rule out any of those possibilities. It would be a personal decision of our crew members. It's not something that we could ethically oblige them to do, because what if they decide on the last moment that they don't want to go? But or what if you've been sterilized and one of your crew members decides that he's not going, and for that reason you're not going? I mean, it would be terrible. So I'm sure that the people we send will be taking the right precautions. And actually, I think that if people want to go to Mars, they will always be well above 30 before I think they're mentally ready to go. So it's even very possible that the women, for example, wouldn't be fertile anymore. Of course, there's always exceptions, so you should really not count on that. But we will take every precaution, and I'm sure that the team members will also take every precaution to make sure that especially the first teams don't get pregnant. Yeah. Thanks.
Right, okay, any last questions now from somebody else? This gentleman here in the front row.
Hi, how did you perceive the decision of Mr. Trump to empower NASA to go to Mars? As a competition or as a consequences or part of the consequences of what you are doing?
Well, NASA has been going to Mars in 25 years for 45 years now. And that's really because of the return mission requirement. So in the 80s, everybody was convinced that in the year 2000, humans would be on Mars. And actually in the 70s, just after the moon landings, everybody was convinced it would be in the 80s. And right now, everybody's convinced it will be in the 30s. But I'm actually, I mean, imagine how difficult it is. I've told a little bit about it, how difficult it is to do the return mission. So unless they're willing to give up that requirement for the humans to go back, I'm convinced that they will not make it in 25 years. So any Mars exploration benefits us. Competition or partnership, any Mars exploration, even Mars movies. So like The Martian or the new one, Life, that's coming up now. It's a horror movie. But all these things, they help us because it puts Mars in the mind of people. So I welcome anyone who has something Mars-related. Dubai recently said in 100 years there will be a Dubai city on Mars. India is now into Mars exploration with an orbiter. The more the merrier. It's only good for everyone. Yep, thanks.
Okay, I mean, whatever way you look at it, whatever side of the fence you're on, doubtful or not, I'm sure basically we've got 30 years to kind of figure it out and get it right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you'll agree with me, it's been an inspiring conversation this afternoon. Put your hands together for the founder of Mars One, Mr. Bas Lansdorp.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.